book 42 of 2020 was Recursion by Blake Crouch. So this is the second book by Blake Crouch that I have read. His other one is called Dark Matter. Both of them are fantastic, very, very good thrillers, very kind of intelligent as well in the way that they're written. So Blake Crouch has obviously got quite a good understanding of topics like physics and psychology, because it comes through in the prose, in the way that he tells the stories, or he's just done a lot of research about it and from that knows a lot about it. So Dark Matter is more focused on like physics and time travel, whereas this one's more psychology, because it's talking about time travel from the perspective of consciousness transfer, which I think is like absolutely amazing, because it's like psychology and sci-fi psychology, and I love all that kind of stuff. So very, very good book. There's a lot of kind of scientific references to the physics and the psychology, which makes it, as I mentioned just before, about it making it kind of more intelligent in the way that it's written. You know, if you think of Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown, there's a lot of like references to art, so it makes it a little bit more intelligent, and this one's the same but obviously in a different way. The plot's really fast paced because obviously it's a thriller, and it keeps you like really enthralled and you want to carry on reading because you want to find out what's going on and what's going to happen. So that was kind of really good, and it's got that kind of classic technique of there's a dichotomy of the narrative, so you've got kind of one person's perspective and another person's perspective, and it's kind of flipping between chapters, and they kind of like then diverge into the one timeline, and they're kind of like fighting for the timeline that they're going to be existing in, if that makes sense. I mean, because what happens in the book, without spoiling it, is that there is a transfer of consciousness into another time point, but there's other people that are also transferring their consciousness, and so they can control whether or not, well, I can't really explain this without spoiling it, but they're fighting for control of a timeline. Let's just keep it at that, to keep it simple. Essentially, Blake Crouch is almost as well kind of investigated like the philosophy behind it, because it's kind of, if you transfer your consciousness into another timeline, or it's almost like transferring you into a past self, and then you can make different choices to come up to date to when you transferred back, if that makes sense. So you'd end up being in a different timeline, because if you think of the way that time travel works, and it branches, and then like trees of the timeline collapse, it's like all a kind of like physics theory, which is why it's really good, because it's aligned itself with all the kind of physics stuff, but it's also talking about psychology because it's that consciousness transfer. So it's really, I think it's great. Like, I really enjoyed reading it for that reason. He basically concludes from the way that the characters interact across these timelines that it doesn't really make much difference if you were to go back and change something, because you end up like going through life and ending at a kind of similar situation, like nothing much changed, which is actually something that happens in Dark Matter as well. So I think that this might be kind of Blake Crouch again trying to interweave that kind of philosophy idea of, there's not much point in time travel because you'll end up in the same position anyway, even if you were to change things in the past, because it's almost like there's a theory in time travel, which is where if you go back and change the past and then come back to the future, it was always meant to happen, because before you left your present day and went into the past, you'd always done that. So a past version of you had always gone back into the past. So you're on a kind of cycle. So time isn't linear, it's circular. So it's a theory within physics, which is, I think it's called like maybe causal. A lot of stories have kind of used this theory when they've been writing about time. So it's not something that's not been done before, but this book did it particularly well. I suspect that the recent series on Netflix of the Umbrella Academy is going to utilise a similar theory to explain after they'd time travelled back and they've come forward and it's different, but maybe they were always supposed to do that. What else do I need to say about this? So the only issue that I've got with Blake Crouch's books is that in this one, if you were to split it into quarters, the third quarter of it, so the bit right before, the last quarter, is a little bit laboured, and it's laboured because time travel is very difficult and unpredictable, and that needs to be kind of explained in the book, but it gets quite repetitive because obviously it's called recursion, things are recurring. So as you can imagine, it gets really, really repetitive. Now, I have read another book called Replay by Ken Greenwood, I think he's called, and it's repeating loads, like it's called Replay, but it doesn't feel laboured. This feels really laboured. And his dark matter one, again, felt the same. It felt really laboured, like it was too much. And there's another book that I read or listened to called Extracted by H.R. Hayward or R.R. Hayward or something like that. And in the middle book of his, I don't think it was Extracted, I think it's the second one, again, that one's really laboured. I think when you're kind of doing things about time, it can get to the point where, in order to demonstrate the difficulties of time travel and the things that go wrong with it, you have to kind of be repetitive, but then that's boring. What Blake Crouch does do in this one is he reduces that in comparison to what he did in Dark Matter, so it is an improvement. What my suggestion to him would be, not that I'm one to kind of give advice about writing books, but from the perspective of a reader, just to cut that down just a slight touch more, because I think if he tweaked that again and just did it a little bit less, it would have been fantastic. It would have been a great book. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was an improvement on Dark Matter, but then that might just be because I read Dark Matter first. But I enjoyed both of them. I gave them both 4 stars. I thought they were really good, and it's been a long time since I've read a thriller that I've really enjoyed as much as I enjoyed this. So yeah, definitely recommend it to read.